It's hard to undersell the influence and legacy of Conor McGregor. With a single punch, he became the face of a sport. With just 10 wins in the UFC, he changed the face of MMA worldwide. Now we're approaching UFC 264, a trilogy with Dustin Poirier, and it feels like we're reaching the season finale of the Conor show. Will next season be even better, or will the next season reuse old storylines from past seasons? Conor McGregor is a controversial and polarizing figure, undoubtedly the biggest star in MMA history, and it's sometimes hard to see history when you're living in it. Welcome to the Calf Kick Sports Podcast. My name's Tim Wheaton, joined as always by Ash. Ash, what's up?
Man, that was a fireworks goosebumps intro, man. Well done on that, and it really is the finale. And what better to discuss this with an Irishman, Raz, man, from Everything MMA.Eire. How you doing, man?
How are we, lads? How are we? All good?
Good, man. Very happy to have you join us and get some perspective from a fellow Irishman.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here, lads. Like I said, you're doing great things, and my man Tim, that was some intro. I must agree.
If you guys don't know Raz, super special guest with Raz here, a Dubliner, a leader in Irish MMA, host of the Fighter Files. You can find him on his page, Everything.MMA.Eire. But yeah, super pumped to have you on the show.
Thank you, my man. Thank you. Yeah, go check it out. I have a few special guests for season 1, but it's only going to get better for season 2 and 3. So definitely check it out. Everything MMA.Eire on Facebook and Instagram.
The guy had you just recently did an interview with John Anik, and I thought that was brilliant, man. It was an organic interview. It wasn't anything, kind of rigid or anything. And I thought it was brilliant, man. The rapport you built with him. Great job, Raz, man. Well done.
Thank you very much, lads. The support means a lot to me. And like I said, I mean, you guys are doing great things, and now together we're going to be doing some great things, So to more positive and, better times for all of us.
Absolutely, man. So I'm actually going to go straight into that question that I wanted to ask. And I've always wanted to ask this to an MMA fan specifically, because I didn't get to do this last time when I was in Dublin. So a few years ago, 2018, literally just a month and a half before the Khabib fight, I was in Dublin, and I was just kind of walking around and generally just talking to a few Irish people, and surprisingly, the reaction to Conor was very polarizing. It was quite mixed. It was like some of them thought he was a dick, some of them thought, yeah, man, he's like the best thing since sliced bread. But I actually thought he was universally loved in Ireland. So that was very confusing. I mean, have I got the narrative wrong there, Raz?
To be honest with you, no. And it depends what time of the year you ask people about Conor McGregor, like I mentioned before. Like I said, the younger generation is behind Conor and remains behind Conor. But obviously, the older demographics would come with some of the issues he's been through, and kind of the trials and the negativity, I suppose, that was cast on him by the press. There is a smaller group within Ireland that do feel that Conor maybe has developed into someone we don't really kind of want representing Ireland. But I do feel that is something that often changes before he fights. So I mean, it's really easy to kind of, say, oh, I don't like Conor McGregor, but it's real hard to say that when you have 1 or 2 pints and Mr. Conor's the main event.
I know. It completely changes. And especially when you get, I call it the fucking Conor McGregor black hole, man. He just sucks you in, man, into this. So this is what's going to happen. I'm telling you now, he's going to post a few things on Instagram, showing his body, going, look, I'm ready, man. I'm ready. Look at my legs, man. I've been building my quads, and the betting odds are going to change. This is what happens literally every single time, man. He completely changes the narrative with his marketing, and props to him, man. What a great marketing and salesman.
Most definitely, man. I'll have to agree with that. And of course, when he does make these posts, the reason why they get so much attention is because this is something he developed himself. So it's not really something that just happened. It's something that he got himself through hard work, and obviously, getting to the peak, of your career. And sometimes it's hard to stay motivated. Oftentimes people talk about, very hard to get out of bed when you have a couple of million in the bank and then you have to go down the road to get kicked in the face to then prepare yourself to get kicked in the face more. So, you know, you have to take these things with a pinch of salt. He definitely does grab all the attention. And I'd say if tomorrow he farted, he'd probably have more attention than a lot of the fighters that are already there and probably fighting on the same card. So, I mean, props to him. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, I mean, classically, it's weird, man. I didn't really like Conor that much, man, right at the beginning. Against Marcus Brimage, I thought, what a dickhead. You know, I thought, look at this guy, man. He's just such a prick. And then, like, the way he took him out, I'm like, okay, like he's got some skills, man. He can back you up. Let's just see. And then after that Fight Pass, I mean, I think he boosted Fight Pass revenue against his fight with Diego Brandao. And I had like 3 or 4 of my mates who weren't even into MMA. I'm like, I kind of like this guy, man. Let me see him. And we already knew at that point, man, it's a different thing with Conor, man. Like he brings eyeballs in.
Definitely does, man. And if you do watch some of these earlier stuff, like you mentioned yourself, it's just been consistent. And every time he got a bit of time in front of the camera, he's always kind of predicted these things. Now, obviously, that can set you up for failure if, you know, you do fail, but it does make you look like an absolute legend if you do get them right. And he's got them right more than he's got them wrong. So, you know, credit to him.
Yeah, it becomes completely mythical, doesn't it? Like you just prophesizing your own future, which is insane.
Man, and he was coming up. He was a double champ in Cage Warriors, and like, so if you're in the MMA community, he's like pretty cool. He's coming up in the UFC. He was main eventing in his 3rd fight in the UFC, which means like the UFC recognized this star pretty early. But I don't think his fame really started to pick up until like the Chad Mendes fight. UFC 189 was absolute gangbusters. That was bananas. When did his fame, like for both of you, we got an Englishman, we got an Irishman. When did his fame really start to pick up and that legacy begin to build? Question for both of you.
I'll start with Raz first. Go Raz.
Okay, so fame for Conor kind of started even before that. Okay, like I mean, every time Dana White was talking to an Irish reporter, even when he was in Cage Warriors, it was just Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor. Now that was really obviously for the hardcore MMA fans that follow the sport, you know, and they understand and you know they look at Cage Warriors, they follow it weekly or monthly or whenever it is, and obviously keeping up with the fighters, but I would definitely say kind of, you know, mainstream for us. From the get-go in the UFC, we just felt in Ireland, Irish fans are often known as probably the best fans in the world, or at least we like to pride ourselves in that, you know. I know the English fans might have something to say about that, but it is what it is. It's just an ongoing battle between us, I suppose. Having another disagreement, it just adds to the list of disagreements. But I can say that, you know, from someone that kind of has a bit of knowledge into MMA. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't, you know, follow it religiously at all times. It's very hard, but I would definitely confirm that Cage Warriors and then first fight in the UFC just broke it for him, and that's when we all jumped on the Conor train. Obviously, like I said, the smaller guys jumped on it whenever, you know, he won the titles in Cage Warriors, but you also have to realize Cage Warriors at the time wasn't really the Cage Warriors it is now. Now it's kind of, you know, it's a lot more, I wouldn't say professional, but it reaches a lot more people and it has a wider audience when it comes to that as well. So
yeah, I mean, he had some signature KO wins in Cage Warriors. I think it was Ivan Butchinger, can't remember his name, but it was just that one punch KO before he got into the UFC, and I think that's what really kind of brought that attention even further to the UFC. But for me personally, I'm going to be boring and agree with you, Tim. I think that is what propelled him to superstardom, that the Chad Mendes fight, because, you know, people were kind of expecting him to potentially lose. He was fighting a wrestler for the first time, you know, and the narrative was, you know, he's going into this fight potentially injured. And man, he fought such a smart game plan. He knew he was going to get taken down. You know, he claimed he was injured. I kind of agree with that, and finished him in the second round. And that was at the end of such an amazing event, man, as well. So for me personally, I think that was definitely what kind of propelled him into that superstardom.
What about you? No, yeah, UFC 189 was absolutely sick. I mean, the weird thing is in Canada, like we like Georges St. Pierre a lot, and like people came out to bars to actually watch Georges St. Pierre. But there was more people at the same bars for like the Mayweather fight and stuff like this. Like, and that's when it kind of hit me, because I like being in the community. Sometimes you don't really see how big things actually are until you step out of the community and you realize, like, my dad's asking me about Conor McGregor. Like, my dad doesn't know who Chuck Liddell is, but he's asking me about Conor McGregor, kind of thing, right? You got people at the bar I haven't seen since high school who were like, yeah, this Conor guy is pretty good. And I'm like, man, you don't know anything. But this is like the influence of Conor, of like, this guy's bigger than the sport at this point, and he changed the rules as to what the UFC. Before Conor, no double champions, you don't switch weight classes, and you're definitely not going to boxing. And after Conor,
defend your title. You know, he never done that ever, and he just went, look, I'm not going to defend any fucking titles, man. I'm going to move up, and then I'm going to do boxing, man. Like, fuck all of you. I'm too much of a draw. I call the shots, which is great, man, to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Raz?
Just think about it on this point, right? So mixed martial arts, if you ask anyone down, walking down the road, if you ask them, do you know what mixed martial arts is? They say, oh, that UFC stuff. So the UFC is kind of, taking over the sport itself. So people will know mixed martial arts through the UFC. But now, when sometimes you ask people about the UFC, it's like, oh, Conor McGregor. So you can see the development, I mean, credit to him on that though, lads. I always like a success story. Just like, this is the reason why I love the UFC, the reason why I love Dana, with all these faults.
Yes.
He has an objective, a target, and he achieves it. And I think it's very easy to kind of, talk shit about these people, but it's also very hard to follow what these people do. So, it's one of those things. But I would definitely agree that Conor right now, whatever he does and whatever he chooses to do, I'm sure we'll still follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Like, I mean, that comes with a following.
Yeah, I think what drew, like, in the West, I don't think a lot of Americans actually heard a legitimate Irish accent. Because, like, a lot of his quotes, if you write it down on a sheet of paper, they're not that interesting, but it's the way that he actually delivers, like, who the F is that guy? Apologize to absolutely nobody. Like, if I said it, it wouldn't be cool at all. But through an Irish accent, it's pretty great.
Like, what are you doing, Tim? It's like,
Let's get into the controversy here. Let's get what everybody really wants to talk about. Proper 12 whiskey, they had to put a limit on it in Ireland at Tesco because it was selling out so fast. Everyone tells me this whiskey is trash. What is going on with Proper 12 whiskey? What is the actual narrative? What's the story here?
I think with that, again, it's with different people and obviously different tastes and different opinions. Sometimes when you talk to the older guys, obviously these are men that have been drinking piles and liters of whiskey, you know what I mean? So when it comes to them, it's like the old school whiskeys, the Jamesons and the Bushmills and that, Even Conor, I think, as far as I know, Conor's like Proper 12 is an extension of Bushmills. So, I mean, with them, they're going to be like, oh, that Conor McGregor whiskey is not the best. But at the same time, you have the younger kids who've never probably drank whiskey. So if anything, that brings them into the mix, because now everyone is posing a picture on Instagram with the Proper 12 whiskey. So it's one of those generational things. But I do think the main concern and the main factor pushing that was the fact that I think the whiskey only spent like 3 years in the barrel and it's meant to spend 5. Again, like, I'm a professional drinker, but I'm not a professional connoisseur in how it's made. So I don't know much about that, but I guess, 5 years is better than 3 for some people, and 3 years is better than 5 for others. So again, mixed feelings on that one.
I mean, I suppose 3 is better than 5 if you're just looking to cash out. Obviously,
and what a way to cash out, my man. It's not just the cash out, because it's easily said, when people cash out for $1 million and they make it in all these articles, and it's another to cash out 100 million plus and keep your original stake into it as well, because he had a transition very similar to Dana White. Dana remained in the same position he was when the UFC was sold. Conor remained the face of the brand, even though the brand was sold. So, I mean, kind of works for him,
Yeah, he's getting dividends for sure, man. 100%.
Yeah, so this was a little bit uncertain. I wrote this story about the rumor that he was selling it. This was March 3rd, and this was when we thought this is probably worth about 235 million US. And it's his stake. He's kind of split with a few other people. They're selling it to, it was Bakel, the Mexican tequila company. It ended up being, this is worth like $600 million. And it sounds like he's staying on board as like the mascot. He's like the best asset to Proper 12 whiskey, more than the whiskey quality or anything else, right?
Yeah, I think so, man. He's just the face right now, and why not, man? Like Conor, whatever Conor is on, it just sells. I mean, didn't he release some shitty looking boxing gloves? They look terrible, and it just looks shit, man. I mean, look, I've hit pads before, guys, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my god, man, this guy's probably gonna make like a few million off this because it's Conor McGregor. And it looks like I'm putting paper bags on my fists, man. If I was to wear it, it's shit looking.
I think you have to be, when you talk about the gloves, I think you have to also look at feelers. The amount of feelers he puts out on that Twitter, and based off the responses, he knows where to go next.
Yeah.
Like that, them gloves came out as a result of the eye poke, the famous eye pokes, and everyone was discussing and debating, should the UFC change gloves? And obviously, just like when everyone was giving out about Man United having a shit season this season, he just put it up. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about buying Man United. Yeah. It was just one of those things. But he has the money. I think anything he'll say, people are like, oh, yeah, Conor's going to do this because he can. And it doesn't necessarily mean he wants to. But again, like you see, he posted a picture of a glove and we're talking about it.
I know. I know. I've almost got a theory that he's got a marketing team that, look, Conor, I want you to say this specific thing because you're going to end up in the Google results later today. And we want you to sell this specific thing the next day. It's very well planned. Like, and have you noticed every single big event when someone's done really well, it's like, well, yeah, I'll fight them or something like that. Or I can't remember the last thing, but whenever there's something like big happens, he always has to send a tweet out. But yeah, it's just typical Conor. He has to be in the center of things, which is fair enough.
We do not mind.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. But at this point, like, he's got 10 wins in the UFC, and he's a bigger star than anybody else. And like, even his losses are bigger than any other fights. Like, he has these capital fights with like Habib. They changed the rules on you having crowds so he can fight Dustin Poirier. The Nate Diaz fight. Like, there's just these insane moments where his fights just develop into bigger things. He was the first double champ at MSG, but at this point, he's going into a trilogy fight against Dustin Poirier. The three of us are in the community, and we're kind of questioning his motivations. What do you think the future holds for 264 and going forward for Conor Raz?
I think was it myself? Yeah. I think you summarized it pretty well at the start. It's like, I feel like this is the finale of a chapter. If it's a chapter or the chapter, it's something that we still have to find out. But in terms of motivation, I think he definitely has more motivation than he did the last time around. Like you said, I mean, to get to where he is, he didn't get there because he wasn't a competitive person. And I do think that he does have them lonely moments where he's like, okay, I need to do this because I don't think the fame will go away, but I think a lot of credibility from fighters will go away if he does lose this. And of course, as well, I mean, he must have a time where he thinks, what happens after these kind of events. So in terms of that, it can either be, okay, he's back. Like, no one's ever going to talk about Dustin's win once he wins. Like, they will, but it's not going to be as big as the third and, the second Conor win. But I do think he does evaluate these things. And to be fair, okay, I genuinely don't think he would jump in straight away if he didn't think that he has enough to kind of, beat Dustin.
Yeah.
I mean, he did it with Nate, and to be honest with you, the first Nate fight, I'm number one Diaz fan in Ireland, and when he fought Conor,
like Nate, man, come on.
No, man.
Were you cheering for Nate instead of Conor then, Raz?
Bro, it was the first time when I was like, okay, I don't want, I don't really want Nate to lose because Nate is being here for so long, and then I was like, I don't want Conor to lose because he will actually fight for a title and will have an Irishman holding the title, the double champ status, So I was like, you knew the possibility was there with the way he was talking and everything. It was definitely there. So, when you look at it like that, I think personally he knows what he's doing, and I have complete faith in him because first of all, I'm representing Irish mixed martial arts, so it would be a bit, naive of me to say otherwise.
Yeah.
But second of all, I just feel, I'm all up for these guys that, take something and make it into, something that everyone knows about, because it all starts with a dream. It all starts with training. It all starts with practice. And there's no better feeling. I mean, look, guys, we've just decided we want to talk about our hobbies, and we're here and we're having fun. So imagine making a couple of millions off the back of this and sitting there and, sipping a pina colada somewhere in Dubai and be like, ha, I made it now.
Oh, man, that's the dream. that's the dream, isn't it, man? But yeah, I mean, it really is the season finale of the penultimate season. Let's just see, man. It's up in the air right now. But I mean, look, if he wins against, okay, let's just say he wins against Dustin, because the narrative right now is he's a massive underdog. Let's look ahead a little bit. How do you think he fares against Charlie Olives?
That's a tough one. And the reason why I feel that's a tough one is because Charlie has been so active. Now, if you asked me this a couple of years ago when Conor was coming off the back of like 6 or 7 fights in a row, yes, definitely. But I do feel that, let's say maybe if he fought twice or 3 times in a year and then got that as a possible 3rd or a 4th fight, I think he would definitely have a better chance.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I almost feel like we're kind of not having Conor in his prime anymore, but maybe it's too early to say that. I mean, look, against the last fight against Dustin, I did feel like he lost some of that explosiveness in his punches, because I don't know, he rocked him like very, very briefly, but if it was Conor in his prime, I would have thought he would have downed him a couple of times. So it's almost like he's lost that explosiveness. Or am I wrong there in saying that?
To be honest with you, I felt for that last fight, he did focus a lot more on the boxing. I think because he has such a great boxing background, he obviously wants to, that's the art I think he prefers, at least coming into the later stages of his career. Because at the start, he was Ninja Conor. He was doing all the moves, everything, the entrance, the kicks.
Yeah.
And obviously, as he got older, he was like, okay, I have the hands, so I'm going to focus on that. But I don't think he anticipated Dustin also has hands, and he has pretty good hands. I mean, you have to also look at the fact, Everlast really pick their athletes when it comes to sponsorship. And he was one of the first few names, well, as far as I know, that were promoted by Everlast Boxing. And he had boxing commercials in the US with Deontay Wilder. So, I mean, I just feel, he did what he did in the first fight, and I don't think he thought as much as he should have about Dustin's boxing. So when it came to it, it was obviously a bit of a shock, because it wasn't just boxing. There was the leg kicks, and it was probably something that he probably thought he was going to do that to Dustin himself. And then when it was happening to him, he was like, okay, what's going on? Because us as fans, we see this, but like when you talk to the guys, and even through my interviews and a couple of the lads, that I know that fight, when you're in the fight, sometimes, you go in with your game plan, and then something happens and a minute can change the whole fight, because you're just trying to catch up, because you had this plan where first round, feel it out, go in, maybe try some things, but keep other things more specific for the second and third and fourth and whatever. But I do think there was a bit of a shock factor for him as well, because as well, when he landed that punch, I think he thought, he was like, right, I'm going to drop Dustin.
Yeah.
And that must be like, imagine having so much strength and so much experience, putting people to sleep with that hand, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay.
Dustin ate that like a tic tac, man. It was crazy, because it was like you could clearly see it, like it rocked his face, but it didn't concuss him. Like it didn't really do much, or he maybe had a really good poker face. And Conor didn't follow up or anything, because I think if he followed up, he goes, look, I'm going to get countered by this guy and fucking knock the fuck out. So that was super interesting to see that after the fight, just watching it again. The hell.
Well, on that now, because I have a question for you guys. The last time Conor fought Dustin, it was in a lower weight class. And if you look at the time between the first and the second fight, if you look at Dustin's fights, Dustin was already in there getting rocked by lightweights, like proper lightweights.
Yeah.
He had so much fight experience. So do we feel that maybe because that experience was there, he was more prepared to be on the receiving end of those punches?
Yeah, absolutely. So I picked like Dustin the first time they fought, and then I picked Conor the second time. But I've been a Dustin fanboy since his fight with like main eventing with the Korean Zombie. This was one of the guys I picked out of like, this guy's got potential, and he's gotten so much better from like being a shitty kind of just like an aggressive, tough brawler to actually like developing a Philly shell that kind of works in MMA, combining it with kicks. He does some really cool like shifting techniques. He's got a couple of techniques that are really cool, and he's developed it by being kind of a crappy fighter early on in his career. But you got to look at the murderous role that Dustin was doing while Conor wasn't fighting. You were talking like Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez twice. He got like Michael Johnson beat the hell out of him. Eddie Alvarez beat the hell out of him. And then he came back, and Max Holloway got beat up by Khabib Nurmagomedov.
What did he do to Max though? I don't want to cut across you, but think about it. Yeah, Max, pretty similar experience to Conor. No, didn't really fight the bigger guys. Looks unbelievable in his natural weight class. But as soon as he went up, it really did show the difference.
Yeah, the power differential, man. I mean, you could really tell. Like when Max popped him, I mean, it didn't really hurt Dustin. It was more like, you fucking annoying me, like a fly on a lion or something. Yeah, you're annoying me a little bit. And that pressure and volume was giving problems to Dustin. But Dustin's like, fuck this, man. I want to take this guy down. I'm going to walk this guy down, and I'm going to be the bigger man. And he showed it, man. He was huge in that fight, man. He was like 187 pounds. I have no idea how he makes lightweight, honestly. It's crazy.
Yeah, Dustin's a big old boy, and like he's, like you guys have said, he's taking shots. Like Max Holloway, like you said, it doesn't quite have the power. And he got outstruck. Like Dustin Poirier outstruck him. Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, like these guys are landing combinations on Dustin, and he's okay. But I don't know. It's hard to tell with Conor of how much power he still has, because clearly at featherweight he had the punch of death, right? He's knocking guys out with like glancing shots, like weird like shots off the forehead and side of the head that are knocking people out, and then he's landing haymakers on Nate and Dustin, and it's not doing as much damage as you know, like you guys expected. Of like, this should be working. This should be putting guys out. It's
yeah.
But no, I like Dustin.
I think it fucks him psychologically, man. Honestly, when he's like, I hit them with everything I got, and I didn't put them away. And you know, with Conor, I think it's not that he's got bad cardio. I think Faraz Sahabi summed up very well. He just has that fast twitch muscle that he explodes very quickly at the beginning, and it expends a lot of energy, man. And that's just the way he fights. And he best not do that for this Poirier fight. I think he's actually gonna try and get a decision win. In all honesty, he's gonna try and go for points this time.
No, going back to the Chad Mendes kind of strategy of using those rangy kicks to try to control distance and being a little bit more of a patient striker, I think would pay him dividends. But Raz, what are you thinking?
I want Ninja Conor back. I'm really like, I'm all up for the boxing, and I love the sweet art of boxing. If you don't, I mean, what are you doing with life watching fighting? You know what I mean? But I do feel that he needs to go back to, you know, being Ninja Conor and start, you know, throwing different angles, you know, kicks and that. I think it's even more so for, you know, just to let Dustin know, you know, it's there. If you know, if you make a certain movement, I will capitalize on it. Because in the first one, it was all just like, right, let's just stand and trade. We'll throw a few kicks, but it's mainly just, you know, a bit of a boxing match. So I think, you know, again, like I said with him, obviously the shock within the fight, he kind of needs to do that to us. You know what I mean? If he eats a leg kick, give it back, because he didn't really give it back. He was eating them and just kind of walking down. But, you know, I'd like to see that. Big fan of Ninja Conor, I must say. I like to call him Conor 1.0. I think he's one of the fighters where Conor 1.0 was so much better than Conor 2.0. And that's just my preference. And it's just, you know, that's just the way I see it. I mean, if you watch some of them gritty training videos, lads, and, you know, the locations where, you know, SPG started and, you know, the areas where they are, you know what he was doing, you know. He was in there 4 or 5 hours a day grinding every single day. And obviously, you know, he wasn't just grinding boxing, he was grinding absolutely every single element of his technique. So I'd like to see that again. I personally, as a fan, would love to see that, because I do feel, and I always say it, and I get so much stick for it, I do not think that if Conor wins this, right, and based off Nate's last performance, I do not think that anyone can beat their rubber match pay-per-view numbers.
No way. Absolutely not. I almost think it's gonna do. I actually think it's gonna beat Habib versus Conor already.
Definitely.
I think it's already gonna be trilogy. Oh my god, man. Yeah, hell yeah.
Definitely. And it's one of those things because it has the trickle effect, and it did it for Nate, and then Nate, in his own sense, had that trickle effect for the likes of Masvidal, and he was trying to do that now for Edwards as well, which I kind of didn't work. Like I personally feel when he pointed at Edwards, it was like in his mind, it was like, should I finish this guy? I'll just let him have it. He's on a 10-fight winning streak. And when you look at it like that, you're like, okay, it makes sense now. That's obviously a conspiracy, and it's just something that you look at. But I do feel that if he does win this and he does it in style, I mean, I'm all up for that match. That's like I was out. Have you ever been to a UFC?
I haven't, man. I haven't. I really need to go to one. Yeah, I've heard it's amazing. Which one did you go to?
I went to the BMF title in MSG.
No way.
And to get over there on a 3 weeks short notice, but you know what?
That must have cost me a penny, man. But yeah, I definitely like to go. I need to go at some point, man, for sure.
Bellator does a pretty good show as well. Going and being a fanboy to a fighter changes everything, of course, because I've been to events where couple of my friends would fight on them, and the highlight of that event was them fighting. And if they fought at an earlier stage, then you don't really care about the rest of the fights. But when it comes to UFC and you're talking about the main card, it's like going back to when you're like 14, 15 and you used to watch these things and be like, damn, what are these lads doing? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if Stephen Thompson, right? You look at him and on TV, he looks unbelievable. But when you see that live, like that ability to just keep bouncing from foot to foot, like that karate stance, like it's an art in itself. And I would definitely recommend it, That he was one of the guys that really impressed me, because I wasn't really I was looking forward to seeing him, but I wasn't, because I was just like, it's just there. It's obviously entertaining, but seeing that, and then try do that yourself. It's like skipping for 15 minutes constantly while getting punched in the face, while defending the kick. It's unbelievable. And then the main event, oh my God.
Was this against Luke that you watched that?
No, it was which the Thompson fight? I think so. I think that was the one. Yeah,
he mauled him as well. That would have been great to see live.
And Andrei Arlovski, which was another guy I was looking forward to, he was slept within like a couple of seconds by Jairzinho. Was that his name? Yeah, like that was. But no, we went a bit off topic, lads. But I would definitely recommend.
No. That's great, man. I definitely need to go to an event. I mean, even my cousin's been to one, and he's a bit more of a casual fan, but yeah, definitely going to be in the bucket list for sure.
Yeah. No, I always tell this. So I'm from Calgary originally, and the UFC has gone to Calgary a couple of times, and every time I'm out of town. So they did a show in Calgary, and I was in Japan, and I was looking at. So Ryzen had a show while I was in Japan, but I wasn't in Tokyo at that time. So I just dodged two events perfectly. But let me throw a couple of questions for you guys here. So we have. Driving offenses, incident at Bellator 187, bus attack, incident at UFC 229, Dublin sexual assault allegations, Florida robbery arrest, Dublin pub assault, and the Corsica arrest. Which one's our favorite? Like, which one do we like the most? Good, I like the pub assault because he bought the
all of them
and the guy. It's a funny, all of them.
He was not even that old. Apparently, they're like, oh, he's so old. The man is so. He was like 50. He's like.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so pissed. Yeah, I'm like almost. I don't think he was even 50, and he's like, yeah, he was old as fuck. Like he just looks rough, man. Like he probably had a hard life, and not only is that video of you getting punched by Conor all over across the globe, but like, yeah, it's so kind of unfair how he just punched an old man, and he's not even that old, and he's like 50 years old. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. The punching of the old man.
I to be honest with you, I think some of those things worked in his favor. Obviously, there are some things in there that raise a lot of questions, but at the same time, I do think that it all comes with the fame, lads. It's very easy to sit here and analyze from the outside. You mentioned it yourself, Tim. The magnitude of some events you don't notice until you kind of step outside. So I think it's pretty much the same for us. I mean, if tomorrow morning you woke up with $1 million in your account, you're probably going to have at least 2 or 3 of those incidents yourself. If you woke up with 10 million in your account, you're going to have probably 5, 10 incidents like that. If you woke up with 100 million in your account, you probably have 50. I do think that when someone that is not educated in how they handle their money, in the sense of how you represent yourself, is a lot different than someone that's already been rich. You know, someone that has gone through the stages or comes from a rich family, you get a different upbringing. And it's look, it's, you know, people don't like to talk about it, but that's the way it is. You're in a different surrounding. You know, you encounter people on a daily that are the same as you. There's a certain mannerism that goes into it. There's a certain, you know, there's a certain location that you might only go to where there's certain people, there's more privacy, and we probably will never hear about it. But if you're just a guy that lives down the road in a normal middle-class household, don't really know what you want to do in life, and then once you learn what you want to do in life, then all of a sudden you go from 0 to 100 in such a short amount of time. I think, you know, people are very quick to highlight those things, but it is important to look at, you know, the education that comes with it. And look how he kind of represents himself now, because Conor's representation of his image and everything else in the last while is completely different from the middle stages Conor and the early stages Conor. You know what I mean? So I do think that, yeah, that's why I love all of them, because it just comes with money and fame. And I do think if you're someone like I'm like my mom and dad were immigrants, so to me certain things were like, wow, when I came to this country, yeah, at a very early age. So I was like, okay. So for me, the excitement was a lot different than it would have been for someone else that's already been living here. So I think even though it's a different example, you can apply those things to these incidents, because again, I mean, it's very hard to say when you don't have the bank account, but it's very hard to, you know, not do those things when you do have so much money, and you essentially don't have to wake up to be like, oh yeah, I have to go and work for the man. You know what I mean? So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's so easy when I've got a 9 to 5, and you know, I'm not gonna have nowhere near as much money as Conor.
Yeah.
For me to go, it's a bit of a scumbag thing to do.
Yeah.
I've not lived that life, so I can't really judge that much, can I?
What I really wanted to get at is Ireland as a country, in terms of sporting, its top end was kind of a lot of football, rugby, kind of boxing. But now, what has the shift looked like? And I know John Kavanagh has talked about it as well, but like, what has that shift looked like? You're a guy with the pulse on MMA in Ireland. What does the shift look like of young people kind of looking at mixed martial arts as maybe the future? This is a viable career they can do now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kids that do MMA at the moment. The majority of kids do it, you know, especially in the inner city areas, especially in Dublin, for example. Soccer was always the go-to sport. And with Conor and with his success, I think that kind of shifted, because there was a lot of boxing in Ireland as well. I mean, we're all aware we have some pretty decent, you know, and pretty good, you know, professional boxers throughout history and even in more recent times. But I do think there's a big shift towards MMA at the moment. And it's not so much, you know, when it comes to the sporting element of it, is Ireland as a nation likes to fight. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we're known as the Fighting Irish for a reason. So I think it was just, you know, being the new trendy thing, being the new kind of, you know, focus of everything, people gradually kind of moved into it. But I would say that even though there's a lot of people practicing it and a lot of people being involved in it, it's a pity that our government isn't keeping up with the people as per usual. And there's still a lot of debate around, you know, are they fighters? Are they athletes? Which is nonsense, because
really?
if someone, no, go on ahead.
Oh no, I was just
Yeah.
really surprised. I'm really surprised at the fact that even with the success of Conor and, you know, how much attention he's brought to Ireland, all that kind of stuff, I really thought the government would embrace it a bit more, no?
Yeah, so did we, man. But it's again, Ireland works in its own way, and the government at times will get a good leader every now and again that's in tune with everything, and then we'll get someone that's just completely like out of this world when it comes to like normal day-to-day society. Do you know what I mean? They cater to their specific voters, and then we're just kind of left out. But in relation to that, I do agree on that, and this is why, and it was one of the reasons why I did what I did with my MMA show, because I wanted to show a personal side to these fighters, because we oftentimes see someone get in the cage, kick someone in the face, punch them in the face, take them back and choke them out. That's a pretty violent image and a violent impression to have on someone, you know? So a lot of the times we don't see the preparation that goes into that, you know, the amount of humble experiences you had to go through to actually get to a point where you go and humble someone else.
Yeah.
So again, that was one of the reasons. And then another big reason was eventually, starting with fighters, I wanted to climb up that ladder and get to these main guys that should be discussing these issues, because I'm a firm believer, and I mentioned it in the John Anik episode, we all have an opinion once the conversation is started, but nobody knows yet how to start that conversation. With some of the guests that I will have on in season 2, and with some of the guys that I've already had on and recorded and will be published, I asked this question because I want people who, people that are successful in the UFC to tell me how they did it. And even though UFC had such a big influence in that, maybe Conor McGregor will have such a big influence in this, or maybe John Kavanagh will have a bigger influence in it. So it's trying to kind of, put all the pieces together and have a presentation where we're like, okay, you denying this as a sport, you're denying someone's way of life, and you're branding them as something that they are not. Because in the end of the day, you don't have to have a chip on your shoulder or come from a broken family or be really poor to be successful in MMA. And that has been proven over and over again. So I do think that it's a matter of time, and it's going to take a lot. But again, it's all down to our government, and it's really up to us, isn't it? Us as ambassadors. I mean, I'm a new ambassador to the sport, if you call me that. So my aim and objectives are, once I finish these series, I want to get an interview with one of these guys, and I want to show them the clips of all the people saying that, and I want to know their opinion, because that's realistically, these are the people that are passing these laws. And it seems that, they're a couple of years behind us in that. And what's it like for England, for example, or Canada?
I mean, here's the thing, yeah. We had Bisping win the title a few years ago, and I watched that with my cousin, and we were going fucking nuts, man, because it was against Luke Rockhold, and we're like, "There's no way Luke Rockhold's gonna win, man. Oh, whatever, man. I'll toss a cheeky $5 on Bisping because he might win, but I don't think he will." And when he won, I was expecting him to be a massive star in the UK. Nothing ever happened in that sense, man. He never got knighted. He wasn't even BBC Sports Personality of the Year or anything. So I do feel like it's more accepted, the MMA community, but at the same time, it's nowhere near as big as it should be. I mean, Bisping should have been, in my opinion, he should have been knighted for that, man. That was phenomenal. But then I'm going to say this as an Englishman, isn't it?
I agree with you, because just on Bisping, I mean, you have to like Bisping broke a lot of barriers for European fighters.
Yeah.
I think Conor gets so much credit for bringing so much ice to the sport, but when you look at someone like Bisping, he was one of the first few that showed, okay, you can be a European fighter. Yes, you're going over to America, and yes, you'll have a hard life, but yes, you can achieve something, and with hard work and determination, you will. And I think it's funny that you mentioned, for that Rockhold fight, I think a lot of people expected that, even though Rockhold was in such great form at that time. I think it was just written in the stars, as you'd say.
You think so?
Yeah. I love Bisping, and I really truly do. And I think his documentary that they did for him as the UFC, I mean, that should have really been done by someone like the BBC. They do,
I know. What the hell is that? Like, they missed the trick, man. I mean, you've got a legitimate, like, kind of British sporting superstar, should be anyway, and not even celebrated by the BBC or anything. And in the meanwhile, you're going to try and target Tyson Fury, who doesn't even want to be a BBC personality. He's like, look, I don't even want that. You guys threw me on the bus a few years ago. So it's strange, man. Bit disappointing, but we'll see, man. I feel like when we get a big pay-per-view star from England, maybe that might happen. I think the closest we can have is Till. But yeah, he's a long, long way off.
Paddy Pimblett, my man. You can't.
Paddy's.
Yeah.
Was that? Oh, Paddy Pimblett. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. What am I talking about, man? Yeah, he's brilliant.
He gets the crowd going. He knows how to like fight for an audience, kind of thing. He gets that this is entertainment, and then martial arts second. But no, in Canada, it's been really lucky with George St. Pierre, because he's such a martial artist first. Of like, I do karate. Yeah. I just happen to do fighting. And he kind of does like really flat, boring fights. But like, he was a bigger star in Canada than like Sidney Crosby, like so Sidney Crosby won a Olympic gold medal, and Canadians still voted George St. Pierre being the sports person of the year. So like, and he hangs out with like prime ministers. So Canada kind of just got it. I don't really know why. Maybe because hockey has fights in it, so their sport is like naturally fist fighting already.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, they're just allowed to fight, isn't it? And then they probably want to see a bit more violence later in the night.
Why not? Yeah, it just goes with the thing. But yeah, one thing I think the UFC hasn't done this. The Isles any favor, hasn't done this time zone any favor, because BT Sport has done a fairly good push, especially with Darren Till and Leon Edwards. They've honestly gave a good effort, and the UFC has not done BT Sport any effort. Like they're trying to like change how this sport is looked at in certain countries, and then you put it on at 5 a.m. Like no one's watching. You know what I mean? Like if you want to pick up local stars, there's just the UFC's not doing any favors for this time zone.
I agree with you on that, but you also have to look at it from the element of business. Yeah, like like you can see why they do it, and I totally agree. But then see, I actually, when it comes to that, I don't think it's the UFC's business to come in here and make those things for us. I think if you have money and you love the sport, you should be making things happen for yourself. So I think it's this was the void that Cage Warriors filled. And look what they're doing. They're actually now going over to the US to have a show. This is the gap that Brave are trying to fill. Again, there's not promotion on the European side, but Brave have so many European fighters signed. So I do agree with you on that point. I think that's an opportunity. Like we are working with a void right now. We're filling a gap because there's not a lot of people in Europe doing these type of shows, doing the coverage that we do. So I think it's up to the promotions in Europe to do that as well, because we can't just consistently rely on the UFC. You know what I mean, man? It's an industry is an industry because it has competition in it. It's a monopoly if there's just one person in it or one entity in it, not a person. So when it comes to that, I mean, yes, I do agree with you. UFC are not very kind to us when it comes to times, and it's so awkward to watch it because oftentimes if you watch the UFC, your Sunday's gone, and your Saturday for that matter.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is time. Like, I mean, at this stage now, with the success, the plan is there. The framework is there. It just needs to be applied here. So I am really, really happy that at least Cage Warriors are doing it. Even though with Cage Warriors, there's so many clubs that don't yet have fighters representing them in the promotion. Which again is something that they need to work at, and the clubs, whatever the relationships are between them. But I do think there is a big gap to fill, and
definitely
Eastern Europe are doing it, lads. Like I'm not sure if you guys
Octagon. Have you heard of them? Octagon.
Yeah.
ASW in Poland.
Yes, man. Yes, and
all these people.
Exactly.
And Vermola in as a middleweight. Well, he was the middleweight champion, and Carlos Vermola actually he fought in the UFC in 3 weight divisions, so he's a veteran. But yeah, check it out, guys. If you've not heard of it, Octagon. It's the only thing is it's all in Czech, so it's a bit annoying. But
they added me as an admin to their event for Facebook.
What's that?
Now that you say that to me, I'm gonna send you a screenshot of it. I was wondering what Octagon was. I was like, what the hell are these guys doing? And I am their host for their event. I think I was like, okay, if you say so, my man. Wow, that is a small world. I tell you, small world.
It's good, man. I only watched it because there was a guy that I kind of follow, Alex Lahore, and he fights at Croydon actually, but I quite like I like how he fights. And yeah, I saw a few of his fights in Octagon, but I think they put on some good fights, man. There's some old UFC veterans in that promotion as well.
And they pay the dollar, man. They do pay the dollar. Like, don't get me wrong. Like in those, like in Eastern Europe, you can easily make 10 grand a fight. And you think that's not, you're like, whatever, but 10 grand is better than no grand. And if you're fighting twice, 2 times a year, you have like
getting 300 pounds.
College, man. Think about it. People go to college to get a 25 grand to 30 grand a year salary. And having 3 fights in Eastern Europe and you're making 30 grand, plus on top of that, your sponsorship and that, I mean, it's pretty decent, And this is why I'm a big promoter of that, because in Ireland, everyone just thinks Brave, Bellator, and Cage Warriors, right? But oftentimes, young prospects coming into the pro ranks, they don't understand that when you have a name for yourself, a lot of these promotions work for themselves. They don't work for you. So when you often come into a fight, you might be working on a slant. So they put someone that they think that can beat you. Obviously, you as a fighter don't think that's possible, but with their experience, and they just build a name off you. Just fast forward it 2-3 years later, if you would have fought that guy 2 years later, you probably would have beat that guy. But now that guy is getting promoted and you're not, and you can barely find the fight. So I do think, you know, people need to kind of start educating, well, fighters need to start educating themselves a bit on that, because there's so many options. Marbella has a promotion which is so cool. They fight outdoors. They have their own fighter hotel. Wow. You as a fighter, what can you do? You go on a 3-day holiday to Marbella and you fight the first night and you have 2 nights off. Why would you not do that instead of going, let's say Belfast, for example, to fight in Clan Wars, right? I only mean it in the sense of the holiday and the experience.
Yeah.
You can always go to Clan Wars. If you're consistently fine on Clan Wars, why not find that experience somewhere else? Like you said, Poland, Bulgaria, lads. Bulgaria have an absolute crazy MMA scene, and so does Poland. What else is there? There's Russia. I mean, Russia is a bit dodgy as always, but I mean, man, there's
no testing.
People go there and they make money. Yeah. There's like, you know, there's the Nordic countries, as far as I know, because I was doing a bit of research, they have 1 or 2. England as well. I mean, why not go and have this experience somewhere else? Why only limit yourself to the local shows? And by limiting yourself to the local shows, if you lose twice on the local scene, no one's going to book you anymore. You know what I mean? But if you go travel around Europe, that's how you get your experience. So definitely a big gap to be filled, and I hope to see more promotions, you know.
Let's just start our own promotion, guys. Let's do it.
We should, man. All we need is insurance and some prize money. Once we can get that going, we're sorted. We have the promotion side on point. The commentating team, the analyst team, the CEO, the interviewers, every single one of them.
Yeah, it's expensive, man. I can imagine it will cost a few million just to start it up, man. Yeah, it must be very expensive.
But I can see why fighters would want to go to KSW. Like KSW is bigger than the UFC in Poland. They were doing stadium shows. The pay is so bad in England that poor Lee Murray had to rob a bank just to get by. You know what I mean?
And
that's so true, man. You had to rob 20 mil, man.
Did you ever see his documentary? Well, there's a short couple of clips from a documentary on YouTube. He was a bad man.
Oh, he knocked out
He was a bad man.
In his prime as well. People keep forgetting that he knocked out Tio in a street fight, and Matt Hughes actually verified that. He knocked him out.
It is true, lads, and you know, I just think it's communication, and it's up to people, you know, to introduce these ideas. I mean, look, my good friend, my good buddy France, had a bit of mismanagement. Was meant to be at the top of his class with the likes of James Gallagher and Kiefer Crosby and all. Went in and fought a guy, right? First fight, he lost. And it was a 5-round, you know, brawl. I think it was 5-round the first time around, against Stephen Lohman, right? No problem. Stephen Lohman wins the title, does not lose again for over 3 years. And he's now in 1, right? He fought him again, which a lot of people didn't want to at the time. People fought Lohman after France, but he went in there and spent 2 fights. He has 2 losses on his record against that guy, right? To us as a fan, you're looking at that and you're like, you know, he's 2 losses. He's all right. He did well amateur, but he didn't do so well pro, right? But when you actually look at that, because he was thrown into that deep end and he was, you know, at such an early stage of his career, he missed out on a lot of opportunities because of that. So now when he went to Bellator, like even with Bellator, because he didn't have that much following, as you'd say, Bellator were like, oh, we'll release a couple of the lads because we only want US audience people. And you would have thought, okay, that's going to be very tough for you to find a fight. Well, fast forward to 2 weeks later after his release, and he came over to me and we were sitting down and he was like, I have an offer, because I kept saying it to him, go to Eastern Europe, go get 3-4 fights. It doesn't matter what fights they are, you just need to get them, because these promotions only want you for big fights, and big fights means bigger risk. It means you have a higher probability that you might lose, because let's be honest, it is what it is. And he was like, yeah, no problem. So we, you know, he got in touch with a couple of people, and then I pushed out some of the release forms just to show that, you know, he's a free agent. And FEN came around, and FEN offered him a title shot straight away, which he then went and took. So now all of a sudden goes from no fights to winning a belt, and now every fight means something. So if he wins the next 3 fights, he's had 3 title defenses. Does it matter in what promotion? Yes, to some people, but it doesn't matter to the casual fan who's going to look him up on Sherdog and say, oh, he was a champion in Poland and he's defended it 3 times. And that's a story that sells, and that's how people come and get you, you know? So people need to be more aware of that, definitely. I have to say that. Yeah, that'll be my very opinionated on this when it comes to it. So sorry.
No, I mean, I like it. I do like the fact that before we used to have Strike Force, and UFC just ruthlessly bought them out and cut a ton of fighters, man.
That's WEC as well. I mean, do you remember the WEC days on Bravo?
Oh, yeah.
WEC was the best. Yeah, absolutely. No, there were some good ones back in the day, but yeah.
Ricardo Lamas throwing it down back in the day. Do you remember that? Like,
man.
The Bravo days.
Yeah, WEC, Strike Force, even Pride back in the day, all good stuff.
Wow. Yes. Says I agree. I totally agree with all of those.
No, and here's the thing, and I'm gonna get back to the main point of, like, we can talk about all these. There's so many amazing organizations, like even Affliction. We have Strikeforce, we have IFL, we had WEC back in the day. King of the Cage. Cage Rage was actually super big for a long time.
Yeah.
And they had their like capital fights. And it's insane that you can say like Conor McGregor is bigger than Sakuraba was in Japan. You know, Conor McGregor was bigger than Bob Sapp was in Japan. Conor is bigger than GSP in Canada.
Man, Sakuraba is my guy, but you're right, man. I think you're right. Like, I think Conor's more revered in Ireland. No, actually, no. Hang on a second. I disagree with that because Raz, you said he's polarizing. Well, I disagree with that just because you said he's polarizing. So I was like, Sakuraba was universally loved. That was a little bit different, but yeah, I would say in terms of popularity, maybe the same.
But yeah, go ahead, Raz.
In terms of popularity, when we're talking Japan, lads, you also have to think of the kickboxers. So I know we're being strictly speaking MMA here, but you have people like Badr Hari that are probably like he like everyone knows who he is, and then you have Overeem as well, you know, and you know this guy that owns PFL, Sefo, like what a fighter he was as well. You know what I mean? So I love a bit of kickboxing. So yeah, no, I do agree that you know every example kind of has their own kind of audience, but you know these are the reason why we're here, and this is the reason why this sport is so loved, and we're taking time out of our days to go and just chat about it and, you know, reminisce on these great moments.
There was some insane, like Bob Sapp, like they were doing 54 million viewers, like Pride in its heyday was doing 30 million viewers. The height was so high.
Bob Sapp,
dude, he was a huge deal. Like he's a joke now, but at the time, right? He was beating Mr. Perfect. He was beating Ernesto Hoost in K1. He was kind of a big deal, but yeah.
Remember his fight against Nogueira? Jesus Christ, man. That took Nogueira. That might have cut Nogueira's life by 5 years.
He fractured his neck in that fight. And 30 million people watched that on TV.
Him, man.
And what I'm getting at is, despite all these viewers, we're talking about 50 million viewers, 30 million viewers, it didn't change what the face of the sport was worldwide. Whereas Conor McGregor actually did that. And that's insane. You know what I mean, guys?
Yeah, that's agreed, man. I mean, he transformed the sport completely. And, you know, he even said this, man, as a kid, like we got that image of him, you know, like spotty faced kid going to the camera going, I'm the future. Like how fucking epic is that? And 10 years later, it's fighting Mayweather for $100 million, man. But yeah, completely changed the sport, man. Incredible.
Yeah. Now he's the highest paid athlete due to the sale. Just an absolute rise from plumbing apprenticeship to being the highest paid sports athlete of the year. Like absolutely insane, right?
I think social media played a big part in it as well, because I do feel that if Mike Tyson had social media back when he was around, he would probably be an even bigger, you know, personality than he is now. And so many others as well, because a lot of those people, when, you know, back in the day, they didn't really show these insights and, you know, all these turbulent times, they used to be swept under the rug. So I do think that, you know, with social media, because we have such a 24/7, you know, eyes on that person, I think that helped as well. And obviously, like you said, in terms of, like you mentioned, in terms of changing the sport, I think that being able to move to another sport as well is what kind of helped with that as well. Because if you look at you look at Michael Jordan, he tried to play baseball and it just did not work for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not really a thing you talk too much about. But again, when you do mention these names, there's only a handful that actually went and did that. And obviously he's in the later end of that kind of list, which means there was more coverage on him doing it, which means there was a lot more opinions on him, because we had social media and now we can put our opinion into a phone and everyone can see it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I am curious what we get an unfiltered Mike Tyson in his heyday sounds like on Twitter.
Oh my God, man.
You guys watch hot boxing. It's like getting the stories we get now 20 years later where he can't get arrested for them anymore. It's like getting them back then. You know what I mean? There's the statute of limitations, but that's exactly how it is. I mean, he speaks. One quote that sticks with me, and I think it'll be funny to have this as part of our show. He said, I look at all these rappers and they talk about having 1 million and 2 million in the bag. And he's like, man, you're too skinny to carry 2 million in the bag. He was like, that man does not know how to get what 2 million looks like, because he was like, me in my prime, it used to take me a half an hour to store 2 million in the back of my Rolls Royce from the bank itself. And he was like, I was the heavyweight champion of the world when I had 2 people with me. So, when it comes to things like that, it's there's quite a lot. And that's why I do feel that we're so attracted to Conor, because we get to see that, there's an element of Muhammad Ali in him. There's an element of Mike Tyson in him. I think, again, in terms of the marketing, and you mentioned the team, I think he's so good at taking exactly what made everyone special and just bring them all to that list. And as years go by, he's had these Muhammad Ali moments when he's in the middle of all the boxing reporters and he's like, I'm gonna take over your world. I'm gonna come in there and I'm gonna knock him out. And then
I am boxing.
He had his Mike Tyson moments where he would jump into the cage and smash a referee or do something silly that you would have expected Mike Tyson to do, or curse at someone or something like that, or be in New York. He went to Manhattan and did all that silly stuff in Brooklyn. And for one day in New York, he was the main attraction because every single news outlet was outside his courtroom. All of those things are just slow developments into just being the G that he is.
Yeah,
and that's just
it's added to his revenue, man, 100%. And that just these just general pay-per-views, man, and eyeballs. It's just added to the whole legacy.
And I totally co-sign with you guys. I want to wrap it up, but do you remember the weekend with the dolly throwing, and we were getting live tweets and we were getting live updates on Reddit of we think Conor McGregor was spotted here, and then we have pictures of his arrest, and he was minute by minute, and Dana White on video being we're not in the Conor business anymore, and all it was a minute by minute live updates of what was going on. It felt like these moments are so rare, but looking back, that's
totally disgusting, absolutely disgusting. I do not agree with this. 3 months later, they use it for promotion. Literally 3 months.
Uncle Dana was loving.
He was loving it, mate. Because I find this absolutely disgusting.
Oh,
it
was worst acting.
3 months later, put it everywhere. Put it all the promotions.
Oh my God. And not just that, but when you look at that action, right? Let's say us three here, we're good pals. We know each other for eternity at this stage, right? 10, 15 years, yeah. And you have that money and your buddy gets it. Imagine being able to do that. You're sitting in Ireland, chilling in your room. You just wait. You come across a YouTube video and your buddy over in America is trying to get slapped by someone, and you're like, all right, cool. Get the jet. We'll just fly over there.
That's some G shit, man. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, sorry, he was there for his boy, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. And as well, it's not people say it's not like Khabib is a saint as well, because he's not a saint at all. He's inciting this stuff by coming on the mic and saying there's 3 people in Ireland, there's 20 and whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it was just Conor got the worst end of it because he's the English speaking guy that we all follow, and he drinks and look, he's doing this on stage. But let's be honest, isn't that why we watch this stuff? When you used to watch WWE growing up, what was the best things about it? When they used to come in with the cameras and go into the background and they throw chairs at each other. It's entertainment, man. That's what we're there for.
And it's the trash talk as well. And going back to that WWE shit, man. he brought that whole different side to the UFC, which
different when you know they're faking, and it's different when you like when you're like, oh shit, this is about to go down. It's like you just click on it and refresh your YouTube feed to try to get as much as you can out of it. You're like, come on, I need to see another clip of this. Or when you go on Twitter and you're like, right, come on, tweets. Who's tweeting? Where what can I see? So yeah, again, I do think like, and as well, I mean, we're talking about this, but this fight is probably going to be one of the biggest fights of the year. So
yeah,
you know,
ever,
I mean,
possibly ever.
Yeah.
Do you think in reality, because we're talking about Conor like throwing Dolly at bus, he's fighting people back. He's fighting like Uriah Faber backstage and stuff. Do you think the O'Donovan brothers are like that once they stop rowing? Do you think they go backstage and get in fights with people?
But then again, look, why do we love Nate Diaz? It's because of the stuff he does. You know what I mean? It's same with everyone. Like, as much as we like we already, the lane of Mr. Nice Guy is already taken by your good country fellow man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no nicer than Stephen Thompson and GSP. Like, it just doesn't get nicer than that.
Yeah.
But like, these are the main guys that we're attracted to, and unfortunately, at times, it's, you know, parental advisory stuff. But then again, we're men. We're not watching the WWE anymore. This is our adult version of UFC. Whoever likes it, whoever doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, John Anik made a good reference. People can say what they want about UFC, right? But it's not like American football where 20 people jump on top of you, or you get hit running at 25 miles an hour, where you actually do damage to yourself. Or boxing, where someone might punch you in the face 60 times before the bell goes, and you know, later down, you know, you have brain whatever and injuries. Like, this is what it is. It's a fight. It needs to be seen as a sport, yes, but when it gets to the peak, I mean, this is what we pay for. You know what I mean? If there's a reason why some guys sell 200,000 pay-per-views, and there's a reason why others sell 1 million on average. So
no, exactly that. Yeah, no, I totally co-sign with you. I'm gonna start wrapping it up. So
yeah,
we're Catholic Sports, Tim Wheaton MMA, Ash. Make sure to check us out, Catholic Sports, on Instagram. If you need a connection to the Dublin WhatsApp group, Raz is your guy. He's a leader in Irish MMA, host of the Fighter Files. Did a John Anik interview, and every fighter in Ireland at this point. If you're fighting in Ireland, you've probably been interviewed by him. Check him out. Everyday MMA.Eire. Raz, I'll kind of give you the last word here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So not everyone has been interviewed, but we're hoping to get everyone interviewed. And not only that, but the episodes in the series themselves is not just for entertainment. It's an educational kind of, you know, strategy for people that are training as an amateur, or people that are at hard times in their pro career. It's a way to see what everyone else is doing. So it's just kind of, you know, it gives you an insight into it. As for this today, guys, thank you very much. It was
no worries, man. Mate, you're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
We loved you having you on. And keep up your interviews, man. I really like your interviewing style. It's not like your bog standard, you know, kind of boring kind of questions. So yeah, keep it up, man. It's great stuff.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And like, it means a lot. Like I said, I haven't been doing this for so long. I've been doing it outside of the sport. I've been doing it professionally for a long time. So it was nice to see kind of applying the same skills. But yeah, I mean, follow us, don't follow us, just watch the content. And yeah, guys, I mean, another big event to look forward to. So hopefully, you know, we can do one of these after the events, and we can look back at all the shit we talked about and see if we can dissect it and analyze ourselves and talk some shit about ourselves as well.
100%, man.
Love it. Cheers, lads.